Hello everyone and welcome to the Vault Festival Marketing 101 workshop. My name's Grace, I'm the marketing manager at Vault Festival. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman in my early 30s. I am in a black jumper, gold jewellery, and I'm in my lovely yellow living room.
And hi everyone, my name is Josh. I'm the head of communications for Vault Festival. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a white British male in his mid-30s with ear-length brown hair, a little bit of stubble, and I'm wearing a cozy black cardigan because it's gotten pretty cold in London, and I'm sat in front of a bookshelf and a decorative plant.
Great, so we'll get started, and also we'll be sharing this on the Vault video resources for artists, so everyone watching at home as well. Hello and welcome, and thanks for joining us. So let's get going. Marketing. It can be really daunting, and I totally respect and appreciate that. So we're going to kind of take it back to basics a little bit in this workshop. So where do you start? How do you start selling tickets to your shows at Vault Festival or beyond? All of this can be put to your future work as well. So the way that Josh and myself always approach marketing is with target audiences. That's what we start with every time. So who are target audiences? What does that even mean? The kind of mistake that we see artists make time and time again is that they answer, well, everyone will enjoy the show. And that is true. I'm sure that's true. But if you end up marketing to everyone, you actually just end up marketing to no one. And you end up spending a lot of your time and energy not very efficiently. And that's hard when you don't have a lot of either, basically. So having a target helps keep you focused and keep you on track. So how do we start to think about target audiences? So in my head, I kind of break it down into these 5 sort of subcategories as to where they could be or what they could be. So I start with story, kind of an obvious one, but who would enjoy the story of the show that you're telling? The next one is theme. So what kind of audiences would be more interested in the kind of wider themes of what you're exploring? So kind of to break that down, an example would be if it's a story about a teenager's sort of coming of age story about teenagers trying to save their town from rising sea levels. The story would be kind of coming of age, sort of 18 to 24-year-olds, that sort of thing. The theme would be people interested in climate change. So that's sort of how I break that up in my head. The next one is form. A lot of artists don't really consider this or forget about it, but it's a really good one. So what form is your show taking? Are you a piece of new writing? Are you a cabaret night? Have you got puppetry in your show? Is there singing? Is there live music? All of these things are things that target audiences would be interested in. So think about what form your show takes, not just the story that you're telling, because there's target audiences in that. The fourth one is creative team. You guys, audiences are really interested in you and your work, and there's no one that sells your work better than you. So have you performed anywhere before? Have you performed anywhere before? The audiences that might want to follow your journey and follow your career and might want to come and see more of your work. Don't forget about them. And the final one is venue. So where is the show on? This is super easy for all of us because we're on at Vault Festival, but you can use this in the future as well. Like, how are you going to get Vault Festival audiences interested in the show? And how are you going to use Vault Festival as a selling point, because it is such a selling point for audiences? So those are the 5 ways that I try and discover who my target audiences are, so it feels a little bit less overwhelming. So we're going to look at a case study now, because that can feel a bit woolly and a bit like, oh, story theme, I don't really, So we're just going to look at a case study to try and sort of map it out. So this was a show that I worked on at Pleasance. I did the marketing for this show at Pleasance. It's called GODOT is a Woman, and it was by Silent Faces, who are an all-female, non-binary led theatre. I'm going to read out the copy. I know some of you can read it here. So it says, we all know what it's like to wait, don't we? Waiting for our banana bread to come out of the oven, waiting for Boris Johnson's 5 o'clock announcement, waiting for permission from male playwrights to perform plays about the human condition. Since Waiting for Godot was written, Non-men all over the world have been waiting to fill the boots of Vladimir and Estragon. Nearly 70 years later, the playwright is dead and his estate still says no. Today, Ariana Grande tells us that God is a woman. So we've decided we're done waiting. Samuel Beckett, thank you, next. With their trademark style of playful and political physical theatre, Silent Faces explore permission, patriarchy, and pop music in Godot is a Woman. So looking at that copy, there's some clear target audiences that kind of jump out. I'd love it if you wanted to write any in the chat, that would be amazing, of like any that you think immediately a target audience for this kind of show. Just drop it in the chat and I'll try and keep an eye on them as we go. But yeah, I think in terms of what I pulled out and my Silent Faces pulled out is really 4 key target audiences. So the first was LGBTQ plus audiences. Yep, Rosa, thank you. Young people identifying as women or non-binary. Perfect, because that's the company's ethos. That's their identity as a company. So yeah, LGBTQ plus, non-binary young people, definitely a really key target audience there. The second one was like fans of physical theatre or kind of clowning or political foolery. That kind of target was really clear to us from that copy. The next was fans of Silent Faces and fans of PLEASANCE. Oh, wow. Yeah, nice. Yeah, interesting comment there. Working class blokes, garage music lovers, and the football fans. Yeah, didn't spend a great deal of time trying to get there, but I like it. And then the fourth one was basically fans of new work. So anyone who might like go to Edinburgh Fringe or go to PLEASANCE or come to Vault Festival. Like there's a real target out there of people who are hungry for new and exciting work. So fans of new work was a fourth target. So hopefully that can kind of make you see how you can see the copy for the show and then like what target audiences that we pulled out of that. So you've got your targets. How do you reach those people now? So again, it can feel a bit overwhelming when you're like, okay, I've got to reach LGBTQ plus audiences. I mean, there's so many ways that you could reach them. So I kind of try and break it down in this list on the left again. So the first is a huge one, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this, but social media, massive, useful, intimidating, I understand. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Direct emailing. Now, this is essentially collating lists of organizations, charities, community groups, anyone who might have a target audience of yours in their network. And you basically collate a big list and you email them and you ask them to spread the word about your show to their networks. Sometimes people are a bit nervous about this one, but honestly, all they can say is no, and it's not a problem. Advertising, so anything that you pay for, basically, this could be in print, this could be digital advertising, and this could also be, your Facebook ads and social spend in that sense. PS swaps, this is a kind of an industry term, but it essentially means swapping information with another company. So essentially, I'll tweet about your show if you tweet about my show. It's such a simple thing to do, and it means that you can share your work with a whole new audience who are kind of already interested in new work anyway. So it's super easy and quick, and it's used a lot in the industry as a kind of way of marketing. The next one is print, self-explanatory really, posters and flyers, brochure ads, that sort of thing. And then the final one is discounts and offers. So anything that you can do that might sort of sweeten the deal for audiences. And that can kind of be used whenever you like. And it's always quite good to have a little discount up your sleeve. I would really recommend that, just in case you manage to get into like a big mailing list, you can just pop that in there. It just sweetens the deal for audiences. So that's sort of how I break down the ways that I can reach these people. So if we go to the next slide. So yeah, if we look here, so Godot is a woman, we spoke about that earlier a little bit. On the left, you've got the target audiences that we kind of talked about and broke down. So LGBTQ plus, physical theatre and clowning, Silent Faces, PLEASANCE, and then that kind of fans of new work, such as Edinburgh Fringe. And on the right, you've got the ways that you can get them or reach them. So social media, direct emailing, advertising, PS swaps, print, discounts and offers. And I sort of sit down with it written like this, and I start to think, okay, which of the things on the right are best for which target? And it's by doing this, you start to map out essentially kind of a strategy and a to-do list. So I'll give you an example. So for LGBTQ plus audiences, what we did was we collated a big list of organizations and charities who work with like non-binary young people, and we emailed them and offered them a group booking discount to see if they wanted to bring a group along to the show. We, on social media, the songs in this play were amazing. They were amazing. They had the best music in this play. And we would really appeal to that kind of audience. So we created a playlist with all the songs, and we shared that playlist every Friday, just as a nice kind of bit of content for around the show. And then what else did we do? Oh yeah, when we did PS swaps with other sort of queer and LGBTQ plus companies, not just at Pleasance, but in the kind of industry who were making work. So that was 3 different ways that we hit one audience. Another example is, you're fans of new work and Edinburgh Fringe. So we did PS swaps with loads of off West End venues in London. We did Facebook ads targeted at people who like Edinburgh Fringe. And we paid for some digital advertising in offwestend.com. So those are the 3 different ways that we reached that one target audience. And that is essentially how you can structure your marketing and how you can kind of work it out in your head so it's less overwhelming and you feel like you're doing everything all the time. Like you have your targets, you have your menu of how to reach them. Just start matching them up in your head and working out the best ways of doing that. So that's how I kind of approach it. Next slide, I think, is marketing spend. So we're going to talk a bit about, if you've got a bit of money, how best to spend it.
As many of you are probably already aware, we have offered out already a list of festival marketing opportunities aimed at the types of shows that come to Vault Festival. And that's something that although the deadline for that is about to pass, that is something that we'll continue to do throughout the festival, whether that be through boosting your Facebook event through the Vault Festival channels, or creating social media ads or promoted posts through our channels for a select number of shows. That's something we'll be sending out in the artist update, so you'll all be aware of it when it does happen. For marketing spend, we know it's always a tough one, and it's basically a question of how do you get the most out of the least. Sophie, our general manager, who has produced at Vault Festival before, has given us this quite useful rule of thumb that for every £1 worth of tickets that you need to sell, you'd spend a 20 or 30 pence. So if you were looking for £1,000 in gross sales, you'd be spending 200 to 300 on marketing. And that's if you've got a fairly robust marketing budget as it is. So it's always worth reaching out to the community of Vault Festival artists to do some of the things that Grace has already been speaking about, such as social swaps, as well as simple things like liking and sharing each other's posts, because your followings on social media, for example, are going to be limited to the audiences who have come to your shows, and there's such a range of work on offer at Vault Festival. And each show kind of brings with it its own sort of network. To make it easier to do this, we've put together a list of all the shows taking place at the festival, what week they're in, what category in our program they're in, theatre, comedy, cabaret, etc. And everyone's social handles across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So if you haven't already seen that, you can access it through the marketing resources on the Vault Festival website, in the resources for participants, or you can always just send an email over to us at marketing@vaultfestival, and we'll send the link over to you. And it's worth kind of going through because it means you can find out who else is performing in your week. We've also included a brief description of each of the shows listed. So if there's a show in there that is really relevant to you and who you think your audience is, it's worth maybe getting in touch with them and seeing if you can work out kind of exit flyering for that show. Or if there's a show in other weeks of the festival, contact the team and see if you can come in and do some exit flyering for the show there. It's a land of opportunity and creativity when it comes to making the most out of your budget. It's worth exploring as many of the low to no cost options as possible because they do work. And in the end, what you're trying to access is that kind of golden nugget of marketing, which is word of mouth at the festival, because our audiences speak to each other. And if they like something, they usually take to social media. So kind of keep track of it. And if people are being positive about your show during the run, just make sure that you're continuing to engage with audiences on social media. We'll talk about social media strategy a little later on as well to kind of go over a few of those points. In terms of advertising, your kind of most straightforward and cheapest way will be doing it through social media again. What's quite good about it is that the social media platforms that you'll most commonly use have gotten very good at audience targeting. So what you can do is take away some of the lessons that you've learned as you've been going through the suggestions that Grace has made about identifying your target audiences and then building ads that are aimed at them, which you can do in Facebook fairly straightforwardly, and Instagram and Twitter, and being specific and kind of disciplined with yourself. And as you do it as well, it's always worth testing. We do it so often when we're trying to work out who's actually engaging with the content that we put out there. We'll spend, for us, it'll be 50 to 100 pounds, like working out which audience is being the most responsive and what their interests are and what their demographic is. But for you, you can get similar results with less money, like £5 or £10. And as long as you're just paying attention to the analytics, which are quite straightforward to kind of understand if you just get to grips with it, spend a little bit of time researching it, especially during this period of time where hopefully it's a bit quieter for you than it will be in the weeks leading up to your performances, you'll get a good idea of what content is working and what isn't. In terms of overall marketing strategy, I'll hand back to Grace.
Yeah, so you kind of have your targets, you kind of have your ways you're going to reach them, you kind of have a budget. How do you kind of put that all together into a document that's easy to follow and understand and keeps you kind of sane, especially when you're making the show, doing everything else as well? So there's actually not a right or wrong way to lay out a marketing strategy. I've seen just people like writing it down on bits of paper. I've seen visual marketing strategies. It's however works for you and your brain, essentially. But there are some things that you can remember as you're kind of trying to work out what works for you. So I'd always ask myself these questions when I'm trying to write it all down. Is can you explain it to other people? Hopefully you're going to get some help from your team with marketing. Can you share your strategy with other people? Is it relatively easy to follow? That's for yourself and them. If you are kind of delegating tasks, is it clear who is responsible for what? That's super important so you don't double up. Are you able to communicate clearly to your venue as well? Like, not necessarily Vault Festival, but if you go on to tours and things, those venues would really appreciate seeing a marketing strategy just so that they can get a sense of what you have planned. This is probably the most important one. Is it clear what needs to happen and when it needs to happen? So that's just timeline stuff, which we can show you in a second. Again, really important. Is there space to break down tasks? Like if you write on one day, I'm going to do all my direct emailing on a Wednesday, that might feel a little bit overwhelming when you come to that Wednesday. So I'd always recommend breaking down tasks into smaller chunks and laying them out in your strategy. So you can take a breather and it just doesn't get too overwhelming. And finally, can you keep track of what you're spending? Where does your budget fit into this strategy? That's again, really important. So ultimately, you can write it down however you like, but a good marketing strategy tracks what is happening when, who's doing what, and how much it costs. So I'm going to show you now an example of how I set it out, just so you can see one option. Again, it might not be useful for you, but it sort of helps me kind of stay sane, really. So as you can see here, this is the marketing strategy that myself and my colleague Izzy put together for GODOT as a woman. So at the top, you've got your dates, and then we basically go, you see your color key there. That's kind of the toolkit that I was talking about earlier. So you've got social media, print, anything Pleasance is doing, direct emailing, digital marketing there in the dark blue. It's kind of like a key, really, and it makes it look nicer because there's nice colors to look at. And then it's basically a scroll down, and as you scroll down, you'll see it's broken down into weeks. So we've got the days on the left there, and then the tasks that I'm going to do on that day broken down. So if you keep scrolling all the way to the bottom, here we go. Then there's key events like launching the trailer, rehearsal starting, and then obviously the show there. So I'm sort of tracking back by about 6 to 8 weeks and mapping out what's going to happen when. And this is a very flexible document. You can move things around. The little X's are where I can satisfyingly tick things off and pat myself on the back. But essentially, you're kind of counting down to the show and thinking what needs to happen when. And laying it out like this, for me at least, really helps me kind of break down tasks and track it through. So if you can see here, I know we're going to print our poster on the 12th, Wednesday the 12th there. And I know I'm going to book my street team for distribution in the day before. So I'm really going to want to have confirmed poster design by the Monday before. And I can just sort of track all that in. So all my activity is kind of broken down. So not only is it broken down by like tracking down to the show, but also I can make sure that I haven't got 10 things to do on one day. Like I can just make sure I only have one thing to do on Friday, if that's helpful. You can also block off weekends and say, I'm not going to do weekends. That's up to you. So that's kind of how I break it down. It just really helps me work out what I've got coming up, what I've done, what's coming up around the corner. It's almost like a bird's eye view of your strategy. And if you scroll down slightly, Josh, also things like, I can see here when the Off West End e-shot is going to go out. And I can see when the Londonist campaign, which was some digital advertising that we paid for, is going to go out. So I can see that and I can think, oh, that's happening next week. Great. I'm working towards that. I need to make sure that they've got everything they need to do that. So it just helps me. And also what's great about this is if you get a big bump in ticket sales, you can go, oh, what did I do? Like, what did I do yesterday that's helped with that? So it's just how I do it. And yeah, that's essentially, I wanted to show that to you because sometimes it can really feel overwhelming to think, how do I write a strategy out? That's sort of what I would suggest.
You can see here as well that what we were just speaking about before in terms of testing the audiences for your ads, Grace has made sure that that's slotted in the first week. And then following lessons learned from that, you'll see here in the next week, Facebook ads, promo shots, those will be then sent out to the audiences that are being the most responsive and getting the most engaged with the content from the test that was done on, looked like day one of the campaign.
Yeah, day one, starting off with Facebook ads. I'd also say what's useful is you can make sure that you schedule in regular things. So if you look, every week I've got planned social schedule for next week. And then every Friday I've got scheduled socials for next week. And you can literally put that in every week. So it just reminds you to do it more than anything. And it just helps you. I just find it helps me not feel too overwhelmed by the big marketing task. Like everything's broken down into manageable chunks. You can see what's coming up. Nothing's going to sneak up on me that I wasn't prepared for. And it just helps you breathe, I think, week to week as you approach your show. And respond to ticket sales. If it's going well, you can look at what you've been doing. Equally, when, not if, unfortunately, you have that mid slump where tickets don't really shift. It's something that happens across the industry. There will be a bit of time where tickets just don't shift. You can look at this and go, oh, it's okay. I've got my Londonist campaign going out tomorrow. that's going to help. So you're kind of being proactive rather than reactive with your ticket sales. So that's just an example of how we do it.
It's also, if you're planning in advance like this, then when it comes to actually posting content, and we'll move on to the next slide in a second, it'll feel more doable. You won't feel as stressed, hopefully. And you can see, you know, Saturday and Sunday, Grace isn't doing very much here because she's planned it all out in advance.
I'm chilling.
All right. That was excellent, Grace. And it feeds very easily into putting together a social media strategy. You've pretty much seen one there. The social media elements of the overall marketing strategy in Grace's case study is just put into words here, planning backwards from the show's start date. Scheduling being so useful, but also it's worth always considering it's engaging content that is gonna do the most for the show. People are so wise to social media now. When me and Grace are putting together this presentation for you, we will sometimes feel like we're telling you things that you already know, but it's always worth not just reposting the same thing over and over again. Vault Festival is sort of guilty of this because we're always pushing our audiences to book tickets, but we try and do this in creative ways. Our call to action remains the same. It's sending people to the What's On page so that they can see the full program for themselves and then let the website do the work for us. With many of you, it'll be just sending people to the booking page. And so finding different ways of being creative around that is going to be useful for you. It's about telling a kind of a story of your show's creation and then its presentation. So including things like if you're doing a cast photo shoot or you're announcing a cast, include things like that. So you're not always just saying, copy and pasting the same tweet with the same cover image, go buy tickets, the show's on sale. And you can say the same thing, but just change up the way you say it. It doesn't take as long as you think. And as always, the different types of content that you have, put them out there. So if it sometimes is worth kind of doing like behind the scenes rehearsal short videos. They don't need to be professionally made. Using your phone, you can put on a title card very simply that says like behind the scenes at rehearsals, and then it can be 30 seconds of one of your cast members talking about how great a time they're having. It's certainly part of what our strategy on social media is going to be this year, is showing the human side of the festival, all of the work that you are all doing, highlighting to our audiences that come back to live theatre. It's in real life. Look, these are the artists who are making it. And we've noticed in the work that we've been doing over the last year that it really does work with audiences. And if they can see the kind of process, they're like, oh yes, I do want to come and see that show in the flesh and have that experience of live theatre again. Another thing we put in here is steal. When you see, if you go to with your artist pass, you'll be able to go to see any show at the festival for free, so long as it's not sold out. And if you go to see a sold out show, then check out their social media and see how they got there and what techniques they were using. Because if there was a secret formula for how to do it, then everyone would be selling out their shows all the time. People come up with really fascinating ways of catching audience's eye that isn't just the content of the show. So it's worth thinking now that we've got less than 2 months to go of how you can start kind of building hype in interesting ways and laying out that social media schedule for you all to save you work closer to the time. And I think the last point is if people are engaging with your content, try and respond to it. Try and say just a simple thank you, especially with each other. Like say to each other that you can't wait to see their shows. That will spread. That will force the algorithm across all platforms to spread news to possible different audiences. So just kind of try to keep it as a regular part of your marketing strategy in the future.
So as Josh was saying about all these ideas that you can use to engage your audiences in your show on social media, I think this is a really useful thing that I've learned that I kind of apply to any kind of marketing that I do. And it's called the 7-to-1 ratio. It's actually from Edinburgh Fringe. And I think it's really, really useful for Vault Festival as well. It's not like a hard and fast rule. This is not like the secret to social media, but it is useful to just keep it in your mind. So essentially what it breaks down as is for every 10 posts on social media, 7 posts of these should be content based. So this is like what Joshua was saying, rehearsal photos, maybe like interviews with your cast and creative team with a headshot, like any behind the scenes sneak peeks, even like a coffee, that's content as well. So kind of thinking really broadly about that, but that's 7 of those posts, of those 10 posts should be content based. 2 of those posts could be like an indirect plug. So that would be like any pre-show press that you might have. Maybe you've got an interview published online. Maybe you've got news of a special offer that you can share. So it's kind of like plugging it, but not directly. And then 1 of those 10 posts should be a straight up, your image for your show, your copy for your show, book tickets now. That's not to say that in the content posts and the indirect plugs, you should still put a link to book tickets. But the main drive of that post isn't just your image and your copy and a link. It's kind of offering audiences a little bit different. So I would always encourage you to put a link to book, but that's not like the driving force behind the post. So hopefully what you can see from this is really like content is super important, and content can really be anything. It doesn't have to be like a fancy trailer. It can just be like you talking into your camera on your phone for a little bit about the show. That's fine. It can be candid rehearsal shots that you've just taken on your phone. That's not a problem. I've shared like a picture of a dog in a hat that was in the cafe that I was having a production meeting in, and that did really well. Like, just trying to be creative and telling the story of your show. So really social media is essentially storytelling, which all of you do very, very well. So just picture like taking your audience by the hand and kind of taking them through the journey of making the show, preparing for Vault Festival, rehearsing for the show, tech, like get people excited, like tell them the story of the show kind of coming to the stage. That's sort of how I would try and break it down in my head. But the 7-to-1 ratio is just something good to have in your mind to remember, I've got to be focusing on content. Okay, so you all are at Vault Festival. So first of all, that's super exciting and congratulations. We can't wait to shout out all your shows. There are a few kind of tips specifically for Vault Festival, and Josh has sort of already mentioned a couple of things, resources that you have access to because you're part of Vault Festival, like that huge list of social media handles. I'd really encourage you to take a look at that. There's the marketing toolkit on the resources page, which is absolutely chock-a-block with tips and ideas and really Vault Festival specific stuff. So I'd encourage you to look at that as well. But these are just a couple of things that I always say to artists when they have a show at Vault Festival, which is like the festival itself, the environment, the atmosphere is such a bonus and such a plus. So how can you use that to your advantage? People might find that a little bit daunting, and it is, but it is also such an advantage. So like, as Josh was saying, sort of teaming up with other artists or companies to cross-promote each other's work, supporting each other, seeing shows for free and then tweeting about them. It's just so much on offer, and I would really encourage you to kind of think of it as opportunity rather than it's super daunting. Remember that Vault Festival is a big draw for audiences. So sharing your Vault Festival story on social media. So if you're in tech and you've got some really cool photos of the tunnels, share them. If you're having drinks in the bar after opening night, get that on the socials. This is all really good content, and it shows the kind of wider venue alongside just your show. We've got like special offers that you can take advantage of and promote. So there's a multi-buy offer. You can find it on the special offers page of our website, which is super useful. And also take a look at our booking with confidence policy. Just helps audiences know that there's sort of a refund period if COVID comes and makes it difficult for them to attend. That kind of thing is just really useful to have as well to communicate to your audiences. I'd really encourage you to share our COVID safety policy with your audiences. You know, we're not burying our heads in the sand here. You know, it's really important that that is an open dialogue with audiences. So I'd really encourage you to help them feel safe to return. And that could just be simply like throwing out a tweet every so often, just listing all the things that Vault Festival are doing to try and keep people safe. And the final thing, and it sounds like it sounds kind of obvious, but artists forget about this all the time, in my experience, is your friends and family are your bedrock to your ticket sales. And they are really the answer to pre-sales, which is what everybody wants. So don't forget about them. Try and make it super easy for them to book. So something as simple as a Facebook event and inviting everyone you know takes about 10 minutes. And it's just a huge immediate win in marketing, because these people know you, they care about you, and they want to support you. So that's something that I personally have forgotten in the past, and I've kicked myself about it. So it's things like that, even sort of personal emails to people, to your family. Just, you know, if you know anyone's not so tech savvy, like emailing them a link to book, just think about them, and think about them early, because they will book in advance and they will bring friends, and those friends will then tell other friends, and then the word of mouth starts rolling. So yeah, they're really important.